What happens when a CEO goes undercover as a customer and uncovers a dirty secret right in the middle of the busiest morning shift? The early morning rain poured down in waves like a damp curtain draped over the still streets of the city's western suburbs. In that thick atmosphere, an old silver-grey pickup truck rolled slowly into the parking lot of Golden Morning, branch number 42. The vehicle drew no attention, and neither did the man stepping out of it. A faded denim jacket, a checkered shirt with misaligned buttons, rolled-up khaki pants, and a low-brimmed cap that hid most of his face. Few would have guessed that beneath this humble disguise stood Miles Carter, founder and CEO of the entire renowned restaurant chain. With over 20 years in the service industry, Miles knew that the worst problems didn't show up in reports, but hid in the places where no one thought to look. That's why he left his luxurious office, shed his title, and became Henry Sloan, a retired long-haul trucker passing through town to visit his daughter. No one welcomed him here. That was exactly what he expected. Miles glanced at his watch. 7:30 a.m. Morning rush hour. The perfect time to witness how a branch truly operates under pressure. On paper, branch number 42 was one of the standouts, with stable revenue, acceptable customer reviews, and district manager Stan always praising the leadership of Rick Morales, the branch manager. But something didn't sit right. The turnover rate was 3 times higher than average. Internal surveys revealed employee dissatisfaction at alarming levels. Stan dismissed it as normal growing pains. Miles didn't believe in that kind of normal. Before stepping inside, Miles happened upon a scene that made him stop in his tracks. A man in his 60s, wearing an old raincoat, was speaking to a young hostess at the entrance. He asked about the peak hour surcharge posted on the notice board. She didn't even look up. "If you can't afford it, go somewhere else," she snapped. The man stood still for a few seconds, his eyes clouded with both anger and shame, then quietly turned and walked away into the rain. Miles watched him go, a heavy weight settling in his chest. A careless word can cost a customer, but a look of disdain can destroy an entire service culture. He pulled his cap lower, took a deep breath, and stepped through the front door. The bell above the door jingled softly. The aroma of roasted coffee, sizzling bacon, and hot pancakes filled the air. The warmth inside was in stark contrast to the downpour outside. But no detail escaped the eyes of a CEO who once served tables himself. The floor near the entrance had a thin coat of dust. The Employee of the Month plaque still showed August, though it was mid-October. A young woman approached with a half-hearted smile, her name tag reading Kylie. She wore no brand pin, a minor oversight, but one that hinted at slack supervision. "Just you today?" she asked quickly, then led him to a small table near the kitchen entrance. From this spot, Miles could see nearly the entire dining area, a perfect vantage point to begin. As she placed the laminated menu on the table without making eye contact or offering a proper greeting, Miles silently took note. One mark against. And that was only the first few minutes. Miles sat silently, watching every movement in the diner as if he were witnessing a symphony played just slightly out of tune. 2 male servers, whose name tags read Sean and Tyler, moved at a leisurely pace, chatting loudly at the coffee station. Each was responsible for only 2 tables, yet they behaved as if they were carrying the weight of the entire morning shift. In contrast, there was one woman moving to an entirely different rhythm, Layla Thompson. She looked unassuming, her hair tied back neatly, her uniform clean but faded at the cuffs, the embroidered logo dull with wear. Layla moved swiftly and precisely, one hand balancing 3 plates of food, the other gripping a coffee pot, her eyes still scanning the room for tables signaling orders. Miles quickly noticed that she was serving twice as many customers as her co-workers, yet showed no sign of resentment. When Layla approached his table, her face remained composed and professional, even though her breathing had grown labored. "Sorry to keep you waiting. Black coffee, right?" she asked with a soft smile, and Miles nodded. As she poured, her hand trembled slightly, but the stream remained steady, not a single drop spilled. Miles recognized the signs. Not a lack of skill, but exhaustion. Today's special is the trucker's breakfast. 3 fried eggs, sausage, bacon, hash browns, and buttered pancakes. Enough to get you another 300 miles down the road. She gave a playful blink, making him chuckle. "Sounds like just what I need," he replied, still playing the role of a long-haul driver. Layla nodded and scribbled his order quickly. Before walking away, she asked softly, "Just retired?" "Yeah, 40 years behind the wheel. Now I'm visiting my daughter. No more schedules chasing me." Layla's eyes lit up for a moment. Freedom after all that time. That's something worth celebrating. But as she turned away, Miles caught something in her voice. A quiet longing for freedom that had been buried for far too long. From his seat, he continued to observe. More customers walked in. Kylie, the hostess from earlier, kept seating them in Layla's section, even though tables in Sean and Tyler's area remained empty. Through the kitchen pass, Miles saw Rick Morales, the manager, chatting with Sean. Both of them glanced toward Layla and burst out laughing. A chill crept down Miles's spine. This was no longer simple favoritism. It was open mockery. When Layla returned with his meal, placing each item with a precision that matched corporate training standards, Miles decided to probe. "Busy morning? Looks like you're doing double the work of those two." Layla hesitated briefly, her eyes flicking around the room. "Just the shift schedule," she replied quietly, clearly trying not to be overheard. "At least the tips are good?" he asked, feigning a sigh as he picked up a slice of bacon. Layla froze for a heartbeat. Her fingers tightened around the coffee pot. "Morning shifts don't usually bring in many tips," she whispered, "especially when tips are shared. And not everyone actually gets their share." Before Miles could ask more, another table waved her down. She smiled, nodded, and stepped away, leaving behind a stillness amid the clinking of cutlery and the scent of breakfast. He didn't need further proof. His instincts told him what was happening here went far beyond shift inequality. This was a system, and Layla, unaware of who she had just spoken to, might be the first key to uncovering the truth. The anger inside Miles simmered like a slow-moving stream of lava, quiet but impossible to extinguish. When Layla returned with a nearly empty coffee pot, he gently lifted his cup as a sign for her to pause. "Could I borrow you for just a minute? If you're free," he asked, keeping his tone friendly, like a concerned father. Layla looked momentarily unsure. "I can bring your check, but chatting is a bit tricky. They're pretty strict around here." "I understand," Miles nodded. "Just considering helping my daughter move to this area. Wanted to get a better feel for the place." A small, strategic lie to create the space he needed. When she returned with the bill, he noticed she had tucked a fresh order pad into her apron, a subtle way to justify standing at a customer's table longer in case anyone asked. "How long have you been working here?" he asked as he opened his wallet. 3 years. Started senior year of high school. Now almost done with my accounting degree at community college." Her face brightened for a second, but only briefly. "If I can still afford the last semester." she added quietly, almost to herself. Tips don't cover it anymore, huh? Miles replied, nudging a $20 bill onto the table. Layla's expression shifted. A few seconds passed in silence. Then she opened her order pad and pretended to jot something down while her voice dropped so low he had to lean in to hear. We're supposed to split tips through the POS system, but Rick only gives login access to a few people. Her eyes flicked toward the counter where Sean was standing. The rest of us are told we'll get our share in cash at the end of the day. Her pen pressed hard against the paper. But it never adds up. I've kept records. Every shift, every receipt. This month I've lost over $600. Miles felt a chill settle in his chest. Why not report it? Layla gave a bitter smile. Report to who? Rick's the one reviewing everything. Sean is his nephew, always assigned the digital POS. And Tyler is his best friend. If you're not part of their circle, you don't have a voice. If you speak up, you get stuck with bad shifts, dead hours, or split shifts that mess with your whole week. As Layla stood to avoid attracting attention, she whispered, barely audible, I hope your daughter finds a better place to work than this. Miles was still. He left the 20 on the check like any other tip, then quietly folded a second bill and tucked it under the coffee cup, where only the person clearing the table would find it. As he exited the diner, Sean was still laughing with Kylie at the register. Scored big this morning, he said loudly enough for those nearby to hear. Outside, the rain had stopped, but inside Miles, a storm was just beginning. He got into his truck, pulled out his phone, and dialed directly to Vivian Lee, head of internal investigations. Vivian, it's me. We have a serious problem at location 42. I need you to meet me in an hour. He started the engine, glanced into the rearview mirror, and saw Layla stepping out to clear his table. Her eyes widened when she discovered the hidden bill. In that moment, the weariness on her face lifted, replaced by surprise and the faintest flicker of hope. That hope was enough to ignite something in him. He may have come for breakfast, but he was staying to restore justice. Less than an hour later, the Lakeside Hotel's conference room had transformed into a temporary command center. The blue glow from 3 laptop screens lit the tense faces of Vivian Lee and her 2 associates, Luis and Emma. Miles stepped in, looking entirely different from that morning. No longer Henry Sloan in a baseball cap, but the real Sue in a crisp white shirt, his eyes sharp as a scalpel. Let's begin, he said curtly, standing behind Vivian. On screen, columns of payroll and tip transaction data filled the dashboard. You'll want to see this, Vivian said, highlighting a column. Rick added a new employee type in the POS system, Peripheral Service Assistant. Sounds legitimate, but that title doesn't exist in any of our internal manuals. Miles leaned in. And Layla's classified under that group? Vivian nodded. Along with 7 others. When labeled that way, they're excluded from being assigned an ID in the digital tip pool. All card tips automatically default to whoever's tagged as lead server. And that person, for 67% of the morning shifts, is Sean Morales. Luis opened another file. Here's footage from yesterday's lunch shift. There was no audio, but the footage was clear. Rick counting cash from a metal box, handing stacks to Sean, Tyler, and 2 others. When Layla approached and appeared to ask something, Rick waved her off. Sean laughed immediately after. No audio at all? Miles asked. No. But watch this, Vivian replied, switching to the invoice analysis. Total digital tips from 2 shifts yesterday was 847. Only $400 was distributed. Sean received 178. The rest, she opened a bank statement, was deposited weekly into an account belonging to R&M Hospitality Solutions, a limited liability company registered to Rick Morales just 3 months ago. Miles exhaled slowly, a surge of nausea and rage tightening his chest. This wasn't just unethical behavior. This was theft. Any formal complaints from employees? Emma, who'd been silent until now, handed him a folder. Only 3 reports in 6 months, all marked resolved by assistant manager. Miles flipped the page. Sean Morales, he muttered with disdain. There's more, Emma continued, opening another set of notes. I called 6 former employees who left within the past 3 months. 5 shared the same story, asked questions about tips, got assigned to bad shifts, were ostracized and eventually quit. Vivian spoke softly but firmly. Layla didn't quit because she can't. She's trying to finish college, surviving on what little is left after the tips are split. Miles clenched his jaw. Every piece of the puzzle had fallen into place. The high turnover rate, low employee ratings, inconsistent service. None of it was a transition phase, as Stan had suggested. It was the symptom of a system poisoned from within. Luis chimed in, based on the transactions we've traced, the total skimmed last quarter is at least 18,000. Vivian placed a hand on the table. We have grounds for immediate termination. The question is, how do you want to proceed? Miles walked to the window, eyes focused on the misty lake beyond. He could call HR, handle it discreetly, clean it up quietly. But that wouldn't be justice. Not for Layla. Not for the 8 employees locked out of the tip system. Not for everyone too afraid to speak. He turned back, his eyes sharp with resolve. I have another plan. Here's what we're going to do. As he laid it out, Vivian and Luis took notes rapidly. Emma sat frozen, then slowly nodded. Sounds like the final scene in a movie, she whispered. No, Miles replied, his voice steady, eyes alight with determination. This is the middle of a bigger lesson, not just for Rick and Sean, but for every manager in our system, and for every Layla suffocating in silence. Luis asked, when do we start? Miles checked his watch. Friday morning shift. I want everyone to see what happens when someone steals from the very people who keep this place running. On Friday morning, unlike the gloomy rains earlier that week, the sky was crystal clear, as if it had been wiped clean. But inside Miles, a storm was still raging. At 8:45 a.m., 3 black SUVs pulled up in perfect formation outside Golden Morning Branch 42, blocking the entrance as if to assert an undeniable authority. Inside the restaurant, the atmosphere gradually stilled. Light laughter ceased. Forks and knives froze mid-air. Layla was pouring coffee when her hand trembled slightly. She didn't know what was happening, but her instincts told her something was wrong. Through the glass doors, 6 people entered. 3 in crisp business attire, a silver-haired woman in a grey suit with piercing eyes, and finally, a tall man in a charcoal-tailored suit. Layla dropped the coffee pot. She recognized him instantly. It wasn't anyone else but Uncle Henry, the kind customer from earlier that week. But today, he was no longer a retired truck driver. He was Miles Carter, the founder of Golden Morning. Rick Morales rushed out from the office, face pale. Mr. Carter, we didn't know you were coming. Clearly, Miles said coolly. He turned to his team and gave a signal. The accompanying staff immediately dispersed to block all exit routes. Ladies and gentlemen, he announced, voice calm but resonant. I am Miles Carter. Today we are conducting a special system-wide audit. All meals this morning will be on the house." He nodded to Vivian, who began distributing free meal vouchers to each table. Rick tried to smile, sweat dripping down his temples. What an honor. Had we known, then you would have cleared the schedule, hidden the tip reports, and wiped the system logs. Miles cut him off. Rick's face froze. Sean, standing near the coffee station, began to edge backward. Vivian stepped in front of him, unblinking. Security has been instructed to detain anyone leaving their position without valid reason. Miles stepped into the center of the restaurant like a general before his troops. "I came here on Monday as a customer, and I witnessed what cannot be forgiven." He held up a file folder. "Rick Morales, Sean Morales, step forward." The restaurant fell completely silent. Every employee, every customer, even the dishwashers in the back were watching. Over the past 6 months, you two have manipulated the POS system and the new loyalty program to siphon off employee tips. You created fake employee codes, miscategorized roles, and directly pocketed money that wasn't yours. Rick started to speak, but Miles didn't give him the chance. $18,742.63. That's the total amount stolen. We have the transactions, the statements, and testimonies from former employees. Vivian flipped her tablet around, displaying the data. Sean stepped back, stammering. "Uncle Rick, you said nobody would ever check." Rick glared at him furiously, but it was too late. "You deceived," Miles said, his voice no longer angry, but steel cold. "And now, you will pay the price." He turned to the employees. "Effective immediately, Rick and Sean Morales are terminated permanently. The company will forward their records to the legal department for criminal prosecution." 2 security officers stepped forward and escorted Rick and Sean out under a stunned silence. "You can't do this," Rick protested. "I built this place from nothing." "You built nothing," Miles replied icily. "You inherited a team of good people and betrayed them." Layla stepped forward, eyes red. "You're not really a driver, are you?" Miles gave a faint, gentle smile. "No, but everything I saw was real, and you were brave enough to tell me the truth, not knowing who I was." For the first time in months, Layla smiled a genuine smile, not forced, but full of quiet relief. And the others? They didn't cheer. They didn't clap. They just stood still, as if something immense had just been lifted, as if a long shadow had finally been chased away. 1 month later, no black SUVs, no suited entourage, no heavy-handed announcements. Just Miles Carter, this time as himself. No disguise, no pretense, walking into Golden Morning Branch 42, wearing a light jacket and a face full of reflection. The atmosphere inside had changed almost unbelievably. The once dusty windows now gleamed. The counter glowed with sunlight. Greetings rang out rhythmically. But what made him smile was when Layla walked up. Her uniform was crisp and new, and her name tag now clearly read, Manager, Layla Thompson. "Good morning, Mr. Carter," she said, with a confident look that made him feel like he was seeing himself 3 decades ago. "Your usual table is still waiting." Near the kitchen door, a screen displayed the shift schedule, open and transparent. Every employee had a unique code, and the tip system updated in real time. "How's the new system?" he asked as she poured his coffee, a gesture she insisted on keeping for herself. "Very good. Everyone can see who's getting what. No more mysterious disappearances," she said, pointing to the screen. "Everything is open. Everyone's equal. And school?" Final semester starts next week. The promotion bonus and settlement from Rick and Sean were enough to cover it all. He nodded. The case had been resolved swiftly. They were forced to return all the stolen money, along with damages for defamation. The story was featured in the industry press as a textbook case for transparent internal audits. "How about the new hires?" he asked. "Pretty good. We kept everyone except those tied to the previous mess. The new ones are learning fast and fitting in well." Layla dipped her head slightly, her expression serious. "That anonymous reporting system you implemented gave us real confidence." That was something Miles had personally added to the new policy, a direct whistleblower channel to headquarters, bypassing local management. "Stan doing his check-ins?" he asked. "Every week." "Still a bit jumpy," she laughed, "but no more pretending." He nodded. Stan, the regional manager, hadn't been fired, but was required to retake the full employee oversight course, along with 6 months of probation. As the first customers of the day began to file in, Layla greeted them with polished professionalism. "Will you be staying for breakfast today, sir?" "No." Miles shook his head. "I've got 3 more branches to check this week." After the events at Branch 42, he had quietly dispatched investigative teams to 10 other locations. 2 had minor issues. One revealed a similar tip-skimming scheme, though far less sophisticated. The wave was spreading. Before leaving, he stopped in the kitchen to shake every staff member's hand. In what used to be Rick's office, now Layla's, he saw her accounting textbooks stacked beside the manager training manual. "We're tracking a 17% revenue increase over last quarter," she said as she walked him to the door. "Turns out, when employees are happy, customers are too. Who would have guessed, right?" He squinted. "Some of us guessed from the beginning." Before getting into the car, he looked back at the restaurant. The sign was the same, the glass doors unchanged. But inside, everything had transformed. His phone buzzed. A text from Vivian. "Just got a report from a location in New Mexico. Similar situation." Miles typed back 3 words. "Send the team." As the car pulled out of the lot, he glanced in the rearview mirror and saw Layla leading the morning shift, eyes bright. He thought to himself, sometimes the most important ingredient in a restaurant isn't on the menu. It's integrity, respect, and the courage to speak the truth, even when you think no one's listening. In the world of business, justice is not found solely in financial reports, but in how we treat the quiet individuals who build success each day. The story of Miles Carter and Layla Thompson shows us that sometimes profound change begins with a cup of coffee and someone brave enough to speak the truth. If you believe that honesty and gentleness still have a rightful place in the modern workplace, like this video, subscribe to the channel so you won't miss stories that go to the root of company culture, and leave a comment with the phrase "Speak Up" to help spread this powerful message.